So we're going to begin the glossary, which is really in a way, it's a summary of the book with the key concepts presented in alphabetical order. So it may be that this is a useful way of, in a way, as I say, summarizing the whole book through the main ideas that are described briefly in alphabetical order in the book. Okay, the next D word is distance. The simple word distance, I sometimes break it up into two parts and hyphenate distance to try to convey this. Distance. I sometimes break the word distance into its two parts to emphasize the separation that perception and thought may create between the perceiver or thinker or knower and the perceived, the thought about, or the known. This doubling or separation occurs whenever the perceiver or thinker or knower withdraws from his or her lived immersion in the life world, and from this withdrawn or pulled back space looks at the world as if he or she were outside it. So these flowers right here, if I were going to just analyze the way that the auxins turn toward engage in photosynthesis when the sunlight comes in and shines on them, or if I reduced the plant to that way of talking, I would be doing it by creating a distance, a distance between myself and the plant's life world that failed to perceive its reaching for that light, its responsiveness as an organism, as a living organism, and instead flattening it out into a thing that can be analyzed from a separated or detached standpoint. So while it is okay to use detached knowledge, the way medicine does, to remove our gallbladder in emergencies or appendix, it's a good thing that we have methods of knowledge that can help us to do things like that. But if you reduce the whole world to that, you despiritualize the world, and you relate to the world from a distance that is a distance, or a doubling, in which the perceiver is withdrawn and the perceived is flattened out into a surface. Okay?
Yeah, the perceiver,
the perceiver is withdrawn, and the perceived is a separated entity that is seen from a distance.
Gotcha. That part is abstract to me, I guess. It's hard to...
Well, it's abstract. But if you think about the method of... People often talk about politics as if, the working class wants this, and women want that, and blacks want this, and, they're going to vote this way. And whenever that way of talking about whole communities happens, there's a distance or a distance in which people are objectified and put in a category that flattens them out. Their true living nature is obscured. Their true living being is something you can only describe much more richly and complexly about how people are interacting with the world. But if they're just reduced to pawns in a game, when that happens, the person who is talking that way, as if people are merely pawns in a game, the person who is talking has removed themselves from the world that they're describing, as if they're talking about something outside of themselves that is just like a chess game or a moving mechanism. Now, this is the problem with in my opinion, I don't think I talk much about it in this book, with Darwin. Okay, Darwin, we can say he made great contributions in developing the theory of evolution. But if everything is reduced to the process of adaptation through natural selection, and that captures the whole of the evolution of being itself, well, being is rendered invisible. And the only thing that is visible are physical adaptations, or maybe consciousness is treated as if it were another physical adaptation. In the service of survival, well, there's a doubling created in which the thinker, as a real living being, disappears completely. What about Darwin himself? Laughing and having a drink after a day of writing and hanging out with his wife and kids and hoping the Giants win the World Series, whatever. The point is that all of that dimension of the existence of the scientist is erased by explaining the whole world as if it were this kind of replication of an outer production system. In this case, adaptation through natural selection, to give the shorthand version of Darwinian evolution. It's not that there isn't any adaptation through natural selection. That can happen. But you can't reduce all of the unfolding of the spirit in history to that kind of externalized formula. And when you do that, I'm saying you operate at a distance from the world, a die stance or a double stance. The withdrawn observer looking at something that is like a mechanism going on outside of you. We're in it. It's so helpful to realize we're in it. We're in everything. We're never perceiving from a distance except on special occasions. The special occasion of using methods to remove my appendix when I have appendicitis, to some extent that involves utilizing knowledge of this die stance type. Okay? But even then, when the doctor is removing my appendix, I'm hoping he's really there, making sure I am palpitating correctly, like he can feel my energy, and this is like he's doing it right, and it's not just looking at the machines, he's also sensing the patient. Yeah. So the point is, we're in the world. We're trying to describe and unveil and reveal the world as we're living in it, not from a detached standpoint, except on special occasions when we want to use detached knowledge. Okay?